Welcome to the podcasts of DiscoverGreece.com, the travel platform of marketing Greece. Here, you listen to your journeys, the ones you've taken and the ones you're planning. You'll discover captivating stories hidden behind Greece's archaeological sites. Together, we travel through space and time, telling stories brought to light through the traces left behind by people who lived and created in these places thousands of years ago. Follow the thread of history with us from yesterday to today. This episode was created by Marketing Greece for Hellenic Heritage. Imagine stepping into a temple made entirely of marble. And when we say entirely, we mean from the foundations to the roof tiles. This temple does not stand above a city. Instead, it rises on a hill above a plain in the Naxian countryside, embracing the fertile land around it. Now imagine you are inside the temple, and sunlight passes through the roof, filtering in through translucent marble tiles. With that diffuse light falling from above, the space must feel truly awe-inspiring. In this episode, we journey into the blue of the Aegean Sea to the island of Naxos and make our way inland to the village of Sangri. Here, at Gyroulas, we discover an archaic temple that carries secrets about the worship of the goddess who gave humans the fruits of the earth and taught them agriculture. The story of this sanctuary and its unique temple began to unfold in 1949. That was when the archaeologist Nikolaos Kondoleon, wandering on a low hill south of the village of Sangri on Naxos, noticed some ancient remains. The excavations that followed brought to light a sanctuary unlike any other. So different, in fact, that its temple, built in around 530 BC, was from the walls to the roof tiles made entirely of marble, so that the moment you stepped inside, light would have washed over you in a truly unique way. It also seems that this sanctuary originally had no enclosing wall. Imagine it, open on the hill with nothing defining its boundaries. But that freedom did not last forever. In the classical period, the sanctuary's limits were clearly marked by inscribed stone boundary markers, the so-called ori. You can admire one of these in the archaeological collection of Gyroulas, which is the site's museum. Let's now take the story of the sanctuary from the beginning, traveling even further back in time. The sacredness of this place is lost in the depths of time, and yet it did not begin as a place of worship with splendid buildings. Around 800 BC, it seems to have taken on a religious character for the first time. Worship, however, took place outdoors at that time, in an open space, without monumental buildings. In other words, this was an era when the sanctuary was defined more by sacred rituals and belief than by architecture. These early cult practices were carried out on a terrain that combined natural and artificially leveled terraces. More specifically, pits were dug in the earth for worshippers to place offerings for the gods, while around them temporary fences or simple structures such as huts and tents, were set up. The small, shallow depressions identified in the soft rock at Gyroulas are most likely connected to these constructions. In addition, a large square pit lying directly in front of the later archaic building of the all-marble temple was found to contain remains of sacrifices. At the same time, pairs of small hollows linked in twos by carved channels in the rock are of particular interest. It is possible that worshippers here offered what were known as aparches, the first and best fruits of their harvest, and also poured libations or liquid offerings known as spondhes to chthonic deities. In other words, to gods associated with the underworld and the earth, seeking to secure the fertility of the land. But who were these chthonic deities to whom the sanctuary was dedicated? The ones who drew worshippers to offer the honors and libations, asking for the earth's fertility and abundant crops? For centuries, the answers lay hidden beneath Naxian soil, until they came to light through certain statue bases found around the sanctuary. Inscribed on these bases were the names of the divine pair associated with fertility in ancient Greece. We are speaking, of course, of Demeter, goddess of nature, agriculture, and rural life, and her daughter Persephone, also known as Kori, meaning daughter in Greek. Other inscriptions were also found in the wider area, which appear with relative certainty to be connected to the sanctuary, bearing the name of Apollo, a god also associated with fertility and abundance. But what, ultimately, was this sanctuary for the island? Was it only a place of prayer or something more? Probably the latter. The sanctuary played a crucial role in the cohesion of the rural population, as it must have served as the shared religious focal point for the 5 villages of the wider Sangri area. This hypothesis is strengthened by a Hellenistic era inscription that refers to Pentarchus, a 5-member council responsible for the sanctuary's administration, highlighting its importance as a center for the local community. Imagine the sanctuary functioning as the main bond holding the people of the countryside together. A bond that, it seems, required sealing with a very special temple, indeed, a jewel of a temple for the sanctuary. Around 530 BC, during the tyranny of Lygdamis, which prevailed after an uprising of the rural population, the wider region, including the sanctuary at Sangri, experienced a period of particular prosperity. It was at this time that the sanctuary acquired not merely a distinctive monument, but a temple that would become a milestone in the history of architecture. This temple was exceptionally impressive. It was Ionic in order and constructed entirely of marble, from its foundations to its roof tiles. Imagine an almost square building with an entrance porch before the main chamber, known as a pronaos, featuring 5 smooth, unfluted columns set between the side walls framing the entrance. If you proceeded into the main chamber, the Sikos, as it was called, you would encounter one of its most distinctive architectural features: 2 marble doorways instead of the single central entrance that was customary at the time. Inside, 5 columns divided the interior across its width into 2 sections. In other words, 2 aisles, an arrangement particularly rare for temples of this period, reinforcing the building's distinct character. Yet, the most striking element, which still inspires awe today, was the temple's roof. It was covered with marble tiles of just 2 to 4 centimeters thick that were semi-translucent, allowing light to pass through the marble itself. This illumination from above must have created an atmosphere that was deeply evocative and mystical in character. It is the earliest marble roof known in ancient Greece, and inside, the walls were not plain. They were coated with colorful plaster, and the columns were also painted. The temple at Sangri is one of the few buildings of the ancient world, and among the very few in Greece, preserved with such completeness, allowing us to appreciate the grandeur of archaic art. It has also provided us with unique evidence for the early development of the Ionic order, including subtle curvature and optical refinements comparable to those of the Parthenon, though here appearing a century earlier. For this reason, it is an exceptionally important monument for the study of monumental architecture and the evolution of the Ionic order. But why did this temple have such an unusual design? One interpretation, and an especially compelling one, is that it functioned as a telesterion dedicated to Demeter and Persephone, meaning a place where mystery rites were performed for the initiated, often at night. The climax of these rites, after the frightening experiences of the night, was the rising light. In the great sanctuary of Eleusis, light in the telesterion appeared suddenly through an opening in the roof, intensifying the initiatory experience. At Sangri, by contrast, the light of dawn entered more naturally, spreading through the semi-translucent marble tiles as a calm, symbolic glow. The votive offerings, in other words, the gifts of worshippers to the sanctuary, suggest that Apollo may also have been worshipped here. In any case, the space seems to have been designed for religious gatherings and processions, which would also explain the presence of two entrances. And here again, the all-marble temple at Sangri departs from the norm. In most Greek temples, the sikos, or the inner chamber, was intended exclusively for the cult statue, while worshippers gathered around an altar outside in front of the temple. But here, the picture changes, as there was no external altar. Its absence suggests that rituals were brought inside the temple. After the 3rd century BC, towards the end of the Hellenistic period, the offerings show a clear decline in activity and interest in the cult. Their quantity and quality indicate that local worship began to fade gradually, losing the vitality and intensity it once had. In Roman times, this decline appears to become most pronounced as there are signs of partial ruin within the building. And yet, the story of this remarkable structure does not end here. With the arrival of Christianity, it comes to life again, but in a new form. In the early Christian period of Naxos, the ancient temple was converted into a church. To adapt the space to the needs of the new worship, small interventions were made. The gap between the 5 columns of the pronaos was built up, and a new door was opened on the west side to facilitate access and the movement of the faithful. Then, in the mid-6th century AD, the site underwent its most significant remodeling, as a spacious 3-aisled early Christian basilica was created at the site of the temple. At its eastern end, the sanctuary apse was constructed and a small cross-shaped baptistry was added to serve the rites of the new religion. A small monastic complex was also added to the basilica, along with auxiliary spaces. These included installations for producing olive oil, wine, and ceramic wares such as lamps, all produced to meet the monastery's needs. Some of this pottery can be seen in the site's archaeological collection. Through these changes, the ancient place of worship continued to serve a sacred purpose, though adapted to the requirements of Christianity. Inevitably, the story of this sacred place, with more than 1,000 years of continuous use, slowly comes to an end, as the area was ultimately abandoned before the 12th century AD. Although centuries later, a smaller church was built within the basilica's apse, dedicated to St. John the Theologian. That church was relocated in 1977 to facilitate the excavations that brought to light all the earlier phases of worship. Today, the site may no longer serve a religious purpose, but it remains a place filled with stories that have traveled from yesterday to today. As you walk through the archaeological site, try to imagine the archaic marble temple of Demeter dominating the plain and worshippers from the surrounding villages gathering here, bringing their offerings to the sanctuary. Imagine early Christians praying here too, on the very spot where Demeter and Persephone were once worshipped. All the different stories written into this sanctuary unfold through the finds brought to light by the excavations at Gyroulas. Many of these, vessels, utensils, and tools, fragments from the temple's pediment, roof, and internal columns, statues of Kouri, the archaic male figures that Naxos is known for, and inscriptions, as well as parts of the pulpit and marble windows from the early Christian church, can be seen in the archaeological collection of Sangri, located in the area surrounding the sanctuary. The museum was founded in 2001 and has been honored with the International Europa Nostra Award for the way the building was constructed and for its exemplary integration into the natural environment. The finds are displayed in 2 rooms. The first presents the archaic temple, while the second presents the early Christian basilica built on its ruins. The Temple of Demeter at Sangri is about more than marble and architecture. It is living proof of the deep relationship between humans and the earth that sustains them, a place where light keeps its presence through the centuries. From the open-air sacrifices of 800 BC to the early Christian basilica centuries later, the sanctuary at Gyroulas remains a timeless witness to the history of Naxos and to humanity's enduring desire for fruitfulness and faith. That's where we'll leave it for now, and we hope you enjoyed this episode. If you'd like to discover more of Greece's cultural treasures and listen to our travel stories, follow our channel, Discover Greece Travel Podcasts, on Spotify and Apple Podcasts. Until next time.